Hey guys, hope you're well. So in today's video I want to go through 7 special functions or global functions that are really useful and it's good for you to know about them. So I'm going to start with global functions. They could be actually used as special functions or global functions. Basically the difference is a global function means it's going to work on all your models globally, and a special function is per model. So you could have different special functions per model, or if you want something that would work universal for all your models, you would use it as a global function. Okay, so we're going to go into our sys and we're going to click onto our global functions, and I have a few here set up. So the first one I want to talk about is volume. So basically I'm going to go to edit and show you what I've done. So here there's a special function called volume, and basically what that does is that controls your volume. So you could actually have the volume set on one of these knobs here, and I've got it set on S1. So you could see the trigger is on, which means it's always on. Function is volume is S1. So I'm using this to control my volume, and then I have it enabled. And basically what that does is, if you look here, if I, for example, was to turn this all the way down, okay, you're not going to hear anything. Okay, so you can't hear anything, but then I could turn it a bit. Armed. And it says armed, or I could turn it more.
Disarmed.
See, it's a lot louder, or I could turn it all the way up.
Disarmed.
And it's a lot louder. So basically, it controls your volume. And if I go here, you could see that it's moving. So you could see that the volume is changing, and I could go louder or quieter. So this is loudest.
Disarmed.
Or I could turn it right down there, and it's going to be a lot quieter.
Disarmed.
Okay, so let's turn it all the way up.
Armed. Disarmed.
Okay, so that's the first one. So let's go back into our global variables, and the next one is very similar. So if I go to edit, there's a function called backlight, and again the trigger is on, function is backlight. So the value I'm using this other one here, okay, my S2, and then it's basically enabled. And what that does is that just controls the backlight on your screen. So I could turn it right down. I don't know if you'll be able to see that properly. Actually, it's turned right down already. So I'm going to turn it up, and hopefully you could see that getting brighter, then even brighter there. So it's not a massive difference. I think you could notice it a lot more in real life than in the camera, but it is really useful. So this is turning it up and turning it down. So, you know, if it was a really bright day, you might want to turn it all the way up. If it's getting a bit darker, you could turn it down, etc. I normally have it in the middle because that's kind of where I like it. Okay, so that's another useful function. Okay, now the next one, let's click on it. Next one is called BG music, which basically stands for background music. And here you could literally put any song you want, and your transmitter will play it. And it's quite useful. So again, you have it on any switch. So I've got it on my position 3 switch, which is this switch over here. Okay, function is BG music, and I've just got a snippet of Last Christmas, as it is Christmas, and I've enabled it. So if I turn my volume all the way up, which it is, and I press on S3, what that will do is that will play Last Christmas in the background, but you could still, if you press a button, you could still have that button speaking on top of that. So I'll show you what I mean. So you can hear that Last Christmas is playing in the background. But if I press the button, you can hear it on top of it.
Disarmed. Armed. Disarmed.
So quite a nice function to have. Let's just switch it off. And basically, I don't think this is really used for, you know, listening to music, but I think it's kind of useful if you're probably like a competitive pilot and you're putting or practicing your routine, you know, flight routine to music. Then instead of having headphones or having it on your iPhone or whatever, you could just play it off your transmitter, which is quite useful. So I think this is quite actually a nice function. If you are a competitive pilot and you want to practice a routine to music, you could just play it directly off your transmitter, which is quite nice, saving you playing it off, you know, an iPhone or something like that. But it's also quite a nice function to have if you do fancy listening to any music while you're flying. You could literally use it for that purpose. So it's quite a nice function. Now again, you could set these on special functions, which is per model, but for a few of these, I have them basically as global functions because I want them for all my models. Okay, and the next one here I've got is called screenshot. Okay, and basically I got that set to position 4, which is this switch over here. Function is screenshot, and I've just got it enabled, and basically what that does is that literally takes a screenshot of your screen. So if I go, for example, to this screen over here and I click my position 4, okay, and then click off it, and then and then if I go into my SD card and I go to a file called screenshots, you can see there's different screenshots here, and I think it's going to be the one at the very bottom. That one, that's the one that I just literally took. So that is the last one. So if I go back, I'll be back there. So it's that one here, and you can see it's just taking a screenshot. Now this is quite useful for a couple of reasons. I guess if you want to capture some kind of something while you're flying, like telemetry or something's going funny, you could take a screenshot. But I think more than that, it's if you do YouTube videos or you want to send a screenshot to someone that's quite good quality, you could literally take a screenshot and then you could download that file and send it via email or, you know, whatever. So it's a nice function to have. It's quite useful. I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so if we go back one more in here. Okay, so there's one that I haven't got set up because it's not really for me. I don't really like it. But if I click on here and go, the trigger I'm just going to put as on. Okay, and it's actually called, let's further up. It's called no touch. I'm going to enable it. So basically, once this is enabled, your touch screen is no longer a touch screen. So now if I try and click there to go back or click on any of these, okay, this is no longer a touch screen. I don't really know why anyone would want to use that. Personally, I don't really want to use that. Now you have to use your scroller there, but basically you no longer have touch screen. So yeah, it's not really for me. So I'm going to disable that, and now I'm back to having touchscreen. So yeah, one that I don't really use, so I'm just going to delete that. But it's there for you if for whatever reason you don't want to use touchscreen, you could literally disable your touchscreen. Okay, so these are the ones that I use for global functions, but if we go back into the model itself, I've got a couple of special functions. So I've got loads of special functions, as you can see. So one of them is this one, which is SD logs. So basically what this does is if you switch this on, so I've got this set to my SE switch, which is this switch over here. Okay, when it's in the down position, it basically switches on a log and it writes a log file. I've actually done a full video on how this works, so if you're interested in logging, please watch this video, and the thumbnail will come up now on the screen so you can see what it looks like. But basically, if you have any telemetry or anything like your stick movements, etc., you know, what you're doing during flight, it will log that, and then you could go back and look at what's going on in the flight. So it's really useful if you're having issues with things like you know, any kind of telemetry that you want to look at, it's really useful to switch the SD logs on and see what's going on during flight. But again, I've got a full video on that, guys, so please watch that if you're interested in this function. Okay, and now my favorite function is that one over here. So actually I have 3 of them, so it's called set main screen. Okay, so I've got this set on this switch SB1 over here, and the function is set main screen. The value is generally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Repeat, you want to have the exclamation mark because you don't want it when you switch on the transmitter, and you want it enabled. And basically what this does, okay, so if you look on my special functions, I have basically 3. Okay, so function 16, 17 and 18 are all set main screen, and I have values 1, 2 and 3 on different switches. So when this SB switches all the way, or different positions, SB switches all the way to the top, I'm going to get basically the first one being triggered.
Screen 2.
Screen 2.
Screen 3.
Screen 3. Now, obviously I
Screen
have...
2. Screen 1.
I have sounds as well. But basically what this does is, if I go back out, okay, I have 3 different screens here. Okay, so I have this, my front screen, which has like things like disarmed, has a few telemetry values, has my module name and picture. And then I could flick like that and I could see some other telemetry values. I could see my flight count. Okay, and then I could flick again and I could see even more values. And this is fine, flicking through with your finger like that, it's not a problem. But basically what this does is, now I could use this switch to flick through. So if I go to the middle,
Screen 2.
you can see the screens changed.
Screen 3.
And then it's gone back to screen 3.
Screen 2. Screen 1.
Okay, and I think this is actually a really, really useful feature or function, because if you're flying and all of a sudden you want to have a look at something, I mean, I never recommend that anyone looks at their screen while they're flying, but if you really do need to look at your screen while you're flying and you want to, for example, look at something in screen 3 or screen 2, you don't want, if you're holding the transmitter like that, you don't want to let go of the sticks and start flicking through the pages, right? Because that's quite dangerous, you could end up crashing. But having it on a switch, it's really easy because you're flying there, and then all you do is you just flick that button.
Screen 2.
And then it just moves to the screen that you want.
Screen 3.
And it just makes it a bit easier.
Screen 2.
So I think this is actually
Screen
a really nice feature to have in terms of safety. So you're not having to scroll using your fingers or your thumb. And if you're flying, it just makes things safer and makes it easier for you to scroll through if you really do need to be looking at your transmitter. But yeah, this is everything, guys. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've learned a few new things. I think all these features are really cool, and it's good that you just get to know them and then you could choose to use them or not to use them. But hopefully, yeah, you've learned something new, and have a good day.